This is the Louie T Network.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to a Louie T Network exclusive Trouble in Patriotize. I, of course, am your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. And this is a fascinating topic that I just had to chime in on. Normally, these types of topics I leave for everyone else to discuss, but this one was just too juicy to pass up. And really, it kind of goes hand in hand and coincides with what I've been talking about all year long. If you've been watching my channel this season, you know that just about since the start of the season, I've said that something's off with this Patriots football team, with this organization. It just doesn't feel right. Now, what I was chalking it up to was simply the fatigue of being great. When you're the best the league has to offer for as long as the Patriots have been, they've been the model organization and franchise in the NFL for the last decade and a half, almost pushing 2 full decades now. And when you've been on top of the league for that long, it's tough to sustain that level of play and not succumb to fatigue. When you listen to some of the greatest dynasties that the major leagues have produced, whether it's the Bulls or the Lakers or the Celtics or whomever, when you listen to those guys recollect on the toughest parts of their journey, it was after they won championships, having to go back, rev it back up, and be reinvigorated and motivated to do it again. It's tough because of the grind and the strain and the amount of time it takes, the amount of work that you have to put in, and then you have to re-motivate yourself. And everyone's looking at you as a marked target. You show up at their stadium, their facility, their Super Bowl is against you. And so for every single week, you have to face it that you're the team that they're circling on the calendar, and it becomes tough week after week. More so in, say, basketball than in, say, football. But nonetheless, it's still a grind. And so I just felt like maybe it was the grind of last year pulling out a 28-3 miraculous comeback in the Super Bowl and having all of the different situations start to weigh on them. Was this going to be the last year of Josh McDaniels? Was this going to be the last year of Matt Patricia? Brady's getting up there in age. How much longer is he going to be able to play? Jimmy Garoppolo's coming up on his deal. So there are a lot of questions surrounding this Patriots organization going into the season. Jacoby Brissett, where does he fit in this whole equation? And as the season started to unfold, you lose Julian Edelman. And then brick by brick, piece by piece, you started to see things unfold that really made you scratch your head. The trading of Jacoby Brissett, which we all knew Bill Belichick really loved him because of the recommendation he got from his mentor in Bill Parcells. So to trade him away to the Colts, that was a little odd. And remember, that wasn't the greatest relationship in the world because of the rivalry that extended with those two franchises when when Peyton Manning was in Indianapolis. Those two franchises hated each other. So the fact that he would trade Jacoby Brissett to a franchise that you thought the Patriots really weren't that friendly with was another head scratcher. Then the big bombshell was the Patriots trade away the guy that seemed to be the incumbent, that seemed to be the successor to the throne in Jimmy Garoppolo to the San Francisco 49ers, which again made no sense. And now you leave yourself with no quarterback after trading Brissett and trading away Garoppolo. And Brady is, oh, by the way, 41 years old. So it just didn't make a lot of sense that they would do that. And so it just seemed like everything was off, not to mention the defense wasn't good to start out the season. And they weren't trampling opponents like I was used to seeing, like we were used to seeing. They had some dominant moments this season. The win over the Broncos comes to mind on a Sunday night in Denver where they just destroyed the Broncos. That seemed more like the Patriots we've come accustomed to over the years. But even in some of their dominant victories this season, whether it be the Atlanta Super Bowl rematch on a Sunday night where they won and won pretty handily, but it wasn't dominant. The score didn't reflect how dominant they were in that game. we've seen this team struggle this season. And look, when I say struggle, it's a relative term, especially when discussing the Patriots led by Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They're still 13-3. They're still the #1 seed. They're still on a bye week here in Wild Card Weekend. It's the same type of production that we have come to know and love from the Patriots. It's just not the same way that they've reached that production that has everyone kind of saying, is something wrong behind the scenes? And there's an article that was written by Seth Wickersham of ESPN that is a tremendous read. If you haven't read it, treat yourself to a great read, and more importantly, some great insight as to what's going on behind the scenes in New England. Now, again, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's backed by me, your man, Louie T. However, some of what's in that article, I think there is a lot of validity and truth to it. Now, again, it's up to you to pick out the parts that you believe to be truths and roll with them and disregard the rest. I'm going to tell you all of the things that I've picked out of the article, and I think that they have some validity and some legs to them. But in any event, Brady and his agent, Yee, have already come out and said, look, don't believe what you heard. There's a lot of erroneous reports going out right now. And so, again, they're trying to put the fire out. But where there's smoke, there's definitely some fire. And you can't tell me that there's not something going on in New England. And so, thus, you get the Louie T Network exclusive Trouble in Patriotize. So off we go as I break it down and pretty much give you a synopsis of the article, but you still need to go read it for yourself. But I'll give you the synopsis of the article and what I took away from it and what I see as a little bit of trouble in Patriotize. So let's go on and talk about this whole scenario, trouble in Patriotize. And it I think all kind of came to a head when you started to see Tom Brady blowing up on the sideline at Josh McDaniels against the Bills the first time around, and what seemed like just a pedestrian play on a third down where Brandon Cooks is open. Brady misses him, and Josh McDaniels says he was open, and Brady just walks by him and he says, he was open, you missed, and Brady snaps off at him, and we all saw it, and everybody chalked it up. And remember, if you watched my breakdown of that game, I said, here we go with Brady going off on one of his sideline temper tantrums. He's done it in the past. He did it to Bill O'Brien. He's done it numerous times. And we always chalk it up. Well, not we. That's not me. Everyone else always chalks it up to, oh, Brady's such a competitor and yada, yada, yada. Had that been someone else, though, they're a head case. These are the type of guys you can't have on your team. They're a distraction. But when Brady does it, he's a competitor. And the article starts by bringing up that situation and how it was a culmination of a lot of things that was happening behind the scenes. And it just boiled over onto the sidelines, essentially, with that blow up from Brady, basically letting off steam because he had gotten to a point where it just had become too much for him to internalize, and he had to let some of it go. And that's how it ended up manifesting itself. But nonetheless, really where this story starts, and pretty much where the rift starts to become apparent between Brady, Belichick, and Robert Kraft, the owner, I think it all surrounds around one man. And for those of you who don't know him, and I've heard his name numerous times, but I don't really get into a lot of the off the field things. So while I knew who this guy was, I didn't do a lot of background research on him because I didn't care. But now that there's a little bit of trouble potentially surfacing in New England, I thought it'd be only just to do a little bit of research and background information on this guy. And his name is Alex Guerrero. Now, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's essentially Brady's personal trainer, business partner, and really a personal confidant. Tom Brady is a very, very personal guy, keeps a lot of things to himself. You rarely see him in the public eye. If you don't see him on the football field, if you don't see him doing a press conference or a commercial, then generally you don't see Tom Brady, because he's a guy that generally stays to himself, has a small circle of friends and family, doesn't let a lot of people in. Guerrero was one of the few guys that was able to penetrate Brady's circle, and so he's a guy that Brady really trusts. And more importantly, he's a business partner helping Brady launch the TB12 program. And that whole situation has morphed into something that has caused a rift in this Patriots organization. And Brady calls him his body coach. And this is a guy that feels like he has some of the tools to revolutionize modern medicine and how players recuperate and how they can extend and have longevity in their careers and extend the lives of their NFL careers. And so this is a guy that Brady has trusted to extend his NFL career. And in doing so, it is kind of leaked into the Patriots locker room, and some of the other players are now entrusting the help and enlisting the help of Alex Guerrero. And Guerrero and Brady have a very unique relationship. Like I said, Brady doesn't trust many people. Guerrero is one of those guys that he trusts. And like I said, he's his business partner. He's his quote-unquote body coach, which all amounts to a personal trainer. And he's his business partner and the guy that has helped him write a book. Brady just recently wrote a book on the whole TB12 method, his lifestyle and how he lives. And, we've heard about Brady and his diet and things that he does to try to extend his career. And while he's still playing at a high level, surpassing the age of 40, which is so rare in a league where the NFL literally stands for not for long, for many that are blessed enough and fortunate enough to play in the league. Brady and Guerrero share a very close bond that extends past the football field and even him being his body coach. So naturally, Brady brought him into the fold, into the New England Patriots facility, and really Bill Belichick didn't see anything wrong with it. As a matter of fact, Belichick allowed Alex Guerrero into the Patriots facility, even allowed him to attend meetings when dealing with medical issues for some of the players, allowing him to treat some of the players. And because of his relationship with Brady and knowing that Brady always put the Patriots organization first and would never do anything to jeopardize the Patriots organization, he felt like this was a guy that they could trust, because if Tom trusts him, and Tom really trusts no one, if Tom trusts him, then we should be able to trust him. So he allowed Guerrero reportedly to access some medical records and have access to players that were injured, and he was able to come in and help assist guys in getting back onto the field away from the facility. He would do a lot of his work at the facility, but they had another facility separate of the Patriots organization, and guys would come there and get treatment as well. And Belichick saw nothing wrong with that initially, but as Brady and Alex Guerrero grew even closer and they started to develop the TB12 program, it became a little bit, and you're hearing people talk about this as if it's a cult. They said it's cult-like, where either you were with those guys or you weren't with them, and if you weren't with them, you were seen as an enemy. Now, remember, Tom Brady is a larger-than-life figure, all right, in New England, but that goes for both Belichick and Brady. And think about this. Bill Belichick is among the most feared, respected, and hated all at the same time coaches in the NFL's history. Not currently in the league, but in the NFL's history. Either you love him, you hate him, but even if one of those emotions is one that he invokes in you, you still have to respect what the man has done over the life of his career in New England. And because of that, the players fear him, all right? But then, to make matters worse, players that come into New England not only have to fear the greatest coach, arguably in NFL history, but now they have to fear the greatest quarterback in NFL history, as well as Brady has become somewhat of a legendary figure in not only the city of Boston, but in that Patriots locker room and organization. Brady is somewhat an extension of management. Brady's taken pay cuts and taken less to help the organization stay on top. Brady has led this organization to the most Super Bowl appearances in NFL history. They've won countless Super Bowls, looking to make it 6 here shortly. And so this is an organization that right now has done it the right way. And I didn't realize that there was a 10-year drought between the 2014 Super Bowl win versus Seattle and the last Super Bowl that they had won in 2004, when they had won 3 out of 4. I didn't realize the drought was that long, but the Giants, you can thank them for that. Even though the Patriots were in the Super Bowl, they hadn't won one because of the New York Giants in 2007 and again in 11. So I didn't realize there was a 10-year gap between wins in the Super Bowl just because they had been there so often. But nonetheless, Brady helping them win their 5th Super Bowl in epic, historical, come-from-behind fashion over the Falcons in Super Bowl 50 really put Brady in a different stratosphere in that Patriots locker room and organization. It almost made him an equal with Bill Belichick at that point. And so all of a sudden, Belichick became uncomfortable with the amount of power that Brady started to gain, not only with the other players in the locker room, but also with management. And we'll talk about Brady's relationship with Robert Kraft here a little bit later on down the line, and how that impacts this whole situation. But Brady started to become a guy that young players would come in and address as sir, as if he were a coach. And so Brady started to preach his philosophy of the TB12 method, and how if you wanted to have a long career, you needed to work with his system, and you needed to have Alex Guerrero as your trainer. And if you had an injury, Brady was endorsing his TB12 group headed by Alex Guerrero as where you should go get your treatment, and not get your treatment with the Patriots organization and their doctors and team physicians. There was a line in there that I thought was key, in which Brady said, when in terms of healing, one guy had injured himself, and he didn't want the deep tissue massage that was given at the TB12 facility by Alex Guerrero, because he thought it would really exacerbate his injury more so than help it. He instead got some treatment on his shoulder, and Brady said that for injuries, Bill's explanation and way to deal with it is to just lift more weights. And I thought that was something that was a little bit odd and strange, but that was a subtle jab by Brady to Belichick as to, and really the Patriots organization, as to the way that they handle injuries versus the way the TB12 group handles it. And so you can see a little bit of a rift there, with players having to decide and choose, do I go with Brady or do I go with the team and their doctors? I don't want to alienate Brady because he controls so much of what goes on around here, but I don't want to alienate the head coach, Bill Belichick, because he has just as much power as Brady does. And so it was a little bit of a conundrum, if you could see where this is going, with some of these players in the locker room who really didn't know what they should do. And when you look at that relationship, at the beginning of the season, Brady and Belichick had a meeting. Belichick saw the writing on the wall with Guerrero being too close to the facility, too close to the operational, daily operations of what was going on in New England. And so he sat Brady down and he said, look, I don't want him anywhere near the facility. He can or the sidelines. He can still, I don't want him anywhere near any of our meetings, I should say. And I don't want him on the sidelines either. He can still come to the facility with you, but I don't really want him engaging with the players as much. And I don't want him as close to our affairs as he once was. And he also sent Alex Guerrero an email pretty much expressing all of those same sentiments. And he also asked Brady, how much longer did he think he could play? And, Brady was kind of spewing that whole I can play into my mid-40s nonsense, 45. I don't think he's going to be able to play that long. It's a very physical sport. And we even see it taking its toll on Brady now. He hasn't practiced as much this season. Some of the hits that he's taken, it's taking its toll on him. And you can believe who you want to believe, but when his wife said last year that he had a concussion that he was hiding, and Brady got really upset, he wouldn't have gotten as upset if it wasn't true. He had a concussion that he hid from the league last year, and that's something that you have to be wary of. This guy's taking shots, and he isn't the same guy. And so he's not going to play till he's 45. I feel confident in saying that. Maybe 43. He's not going to make it to 45, but in any event, Belichick wanted to make sure that he prepared the organization for life after Brady. And Brady was like, what life after Brady? I'm not going anywhere. I've still got a lot of years of football left in me. And so there was a rift between the two. And so there was a stare down essentially between Brady and Belichick. And everyone was walking on eggshells essentially because of the tension that was building. And there was a game in the playoffs last year versus Houston in which Brady didn't play his best, made some mistakes, but they were able to beat the Texans because of Brock Osweiler and the mess at quarterback there. But nonetheless, Belichick tore into Brady's ass. And he felt disrespected by Bill Belichick because Belichick has done it in the past where he would tear into Brady just because, and we see a lot of prominent head coaches do this in other leagues, where you take the best player on the team and you eviscerate him in front of the team to show everyone that if I'll do it to him, I will do it to you. So Brady has become accustomed to Bill Belichick using him as a pawn to basically show everyone else that you either fall in line or you get out of here. And so no one's immune to being persecuted, and no one's immune to having to do their job and being held accountable for not doing their job. But in this particular instance, Brady thought that Belichick had went too far, and so that meeting was about a lot of different things, and they didn't come to a resolution at the end of the meeting. As a matter of fact, they were at odds with one another. And then the Julian Edelman injury happens, and everyone was looking around as to who was going to fill that void. And so now all the players really felt this sort of weird vibe that, hey, we definitely got to join the TB12 group and get our treatment from Alex Guerrero if we want to be on Brady's good side, because he's going to be the advocate for guys getting more playing time and who's going to be able to fill that void. So we really need to be under Brady's wing. And so there was a weird dynamic going on in that locker room as these two started to have a little bit of a stare-off in terms of a power struggle of sorts. And then you go to something that I always was fascinated by, and that's the Jimmy Garoppolo angle in all of this, which this was another key source of some of the dissension between Brady, Belichick, and Kraft. Jimmy G is a guy that I always thought was really talented coming out of Eastern Illinois. The Patriots have done this over the years with Brady, where they draft quarterbacks seemingly every other year just because they never knew when the time was going to come that Brady wasn't going to be able to do it at a high level. This goes all the way back to the Matt Castle years where, whether it's Brian Hoyer, Matt Castle, they've done this for years and years and years, where they draft a quarterback, they make him look good, they shine him up, they trade him away, they get picks in return. So Jimmy Garoppolo, he was a little different. Bill Belichick, and the reason this was a little bit different of a situation, one, Brady was older now. When they had Matt Castle, when they had Brian Hoyer, when they had all these other backups that went on to start elsewhere, the dynamic was different because Brady was still young in the prime of his career, and the end wasn't imminent. It wasn't near. So you didn't feel the need to hold on to any of those guys. You felt like getting value for them was the right thing to do. But in the case of Jimmy Garoppolo, Belichick took a special liking to him. There was a quality to Garoppolo that Belichick really liked and felt like this kid has it. He has the makings of the next big thing in New England after Brady and would be the perfect successor. And so he started to take him under his wing. And there were numerous times where he could have traded Jimmy Garoppolo, but he didn't. And remember, we kept saying, well, they're going to flip Jimmy. They're going to flip Jimmy. They're going to flip Jimmy. They never flipped Jimmy. The reason why? Bill Belichick was doing his best to make sure that they didn't flip Jimmy Garoppolo because he knew he had the potential to be Brady's successor. And so while everyone was saying, when are they going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo? They never, ever did it because Bill Belichick wasn't in favor of getting rid of him. And now, and you know, this is rare for the Patriots. Normally, when they have a quarterback, they don't wait till the last year of that quarterback's deal and look to have to find a way to get rid of him. They usually are proactive in these things. It's called the Patriot way. We've discussed that numerous times. They usually are one step ahead of the rest of the league in terms of moving players and things of that nature. So in everybody's mind, Jimmy Garoppolo was supposed to be gone last year during the draft. Well, he didn't go. He was supposed to be gone last offseason. Well, he didn't go. And the reason we later found out was because of Bill Belichick. And I remember talking about this when it happened, but remember the whole Deflategate situation and Brady being suspended 4 games and how Brady had to sit out for the first 4 games of the season. Garoppolo played well. Remember, they came off of a huge win in week 1 versus Arizona, in which Garoppolo led them to that victory and played extremely well. And everyone was looking like, man, this guy's pretty good. And he started out the season 2-0, then he got injured. And then Jacoby Brissett had to play the final 2 games until Brady. And remember how anxious Brady was to get back because he was nervous about Garoppolo and how Garoppolo was playing well and how everyone – and Brady is not unlike other star athletes who have these weird quirks and things that drive them and motivate them. And one of those things for a lot of these tremendous athletes is fear. And it's different for each athlete, but a lot of them fear something. And for Brady – his fear of not being relevant, his fear of not being the guy, his fear of being replaced is what drove him and still drives him to this day to be great. And so once Brady was able to get back on the field, we know what he was able to accomplish, and Garoppolo was cast back to the bench. But Bill Belichick never felt like Garoppolo was one of these trade bait quarterbacks. He felt like he was the one. Of all these quarterbacks he's drafted throughout the Brady administration, he felt like he was the one that could replace him. And they tried to reach a deal with Garoppolo, a long-term deal in which Jimmy Garoppolo simply didn't want to sign. And it was a lucrative deal for a guy who hadn't really started. They were looking to pay him every bit of $17 or $18 million per year, which is good money for a guy that hasn't really started in this league. But Garoppolo turned it down simply because he didn't know, and the Patriots couldn't assure him of when Tom Brady was going to finally hang it up and turn the mantle over to him. And Brady had no intentions of doing that. Garoppolo knew that, and so he didn't want to sign long-term with the Patriots. And so it kind of forced the hand of the Patriots to make a decision. One, you don't want to be paying Tom Brady $22 million and then have to use the franchise tag on Jimmy Garoppolo as well to keep him because he doesn't want to sign a long-term deal. And two, if you can't work out a long-term deal, you don't want this guy to walk away for nothing. You don't want to get nothing in exchange for Garoppolo. And if you lose him in free agency, all you're getting back is a compensatory pick, which isn't suffice for a guy that you deem as high in your organization. So what Brady did was he went essentially to Robert Kraft and went over the head of Bill Belichick and had some meetings with Robert Kraft about his ability to play and play well into his 40s. And it's a weird dynamic between Brady and Jimmy G because, as you know, and we've heard this before, this isn't the first time. And I don't want to make Brady to be out to be some type of animal or some type of asshole, which he may be, but we've seen this in the past with Joe Montana and Steve Young, with Brett Favre. I remember Aaron Rodgers vividly detailing how Brett Favre didn't help him at all in Green Bay. They had a great relationship. You remember when he would come off to the sideline and they would shoot the guns and put them away in the holsters? They had a great relationship. Same with Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo. Great relationship. They're cool with each other, but Brady didn't help him with anything. Footwork, ball placement, anything. All right? There was no tutelage going on whatsoever. There was no understudying. Tom Brady wasn't trying to help prep his replacement. He was looking to continue to be the guy in New England. And so Jimmy Garoppolo understood what this was and knew he needed to get out. So he wouldn't sign a long-term deal. And because of that, Brady then saw fit to go to Robert Kraft because he felt threatened by Jimmy Garoppolo. He knew Bill Belichick felt like Garoppolo was the future. And we know that there's a special relationship with Tom Brady and Robert Kraft. And when you win, there is a special relationship. We've seen player-owner relationships exceed the field in multiple sports. And when you're a legend on a team and in a town, it does transcend just the field or the arena or wherever you are, whether it's Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers, whether it's Michael Jordan in the Chicago Bulls, Derek Jeter in the New York Yankees, Tom Brady in the New England Patriots. You see where this is going. When you're a legend, there's a certain way that things are handled. And if you don't like it, you can always go to management because they're never going to disrespect you. That's why a lot of people couldn't understand why the situation in New York with Eli Manning was handled the way that it was, because you don't do that to a guy that has won you 2 Super Bowls and is a legend and held in such high regards and respects within your organization. You don't do that to a guy the stature of Eli Manning. So Tom Brady and Robert Kraft, they do have a great relationship. We remember the infamous kiss on the sidelines before one of the games a few years ago. Brady went to Kraft essentially and said, look, I'm your guy. And after they had the miraculous comeback, 28-3 over the Falcons in Super Bowl 50, it became even more apparent to Kraft that Brady's got years left. And if this guy says he can play well into his 40s, I'm inclined to believe him because this guy just made the most miraculous comeback in Super Bowl history. And we've won the Super Bowl the last 2 out of 3 years. What's to stop me from thinking that we can't win it again and again and again with this guy under center? If he says he can get it done, I believe Tom Brady can get it done. And so he expressed his concerns and he let Robert Kraft know, look, I'm good. You can't afford me and Jimmy Garoppolo. You don't want to lose Garoppolo and get nothing for him. Your best bet is to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. I believe Tom Brady went in there and in some form or fashion said that. May not have said it directly, but I think he said in some form or fashion, hey, look, I'm not going anywhere. I know you trust me. I just won you another Super Bowl. I think I can win you multiple Super Bowls in the next 5 years. You give me time. I'll show you that I can continue to win for this organization like I've done over the last decade and a half. And Robert Kraft said, you know what? I trust you, Tom. And you're right. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't want to sign our deal. We extended him a long-term deal for $17 to $18 million per year over the next 4 or 5 years. He didn't want to take our deal. He wants to leave after the season. We must get something for him. You're right. And so after that meeting with Brady, Kraft then had a meeting with Belichick, one that extended a lot longer than a lot of people were used to them two having meetings for. It forced Belichick to push all of his meetings for that date back. And at the end of the meeting, the two were still at odds over what should be done with Jimmy Garoppolo. As you know, Belichick had always protected Garoppolo, didn't trade him, didn't want to trade him, but Robert Kraft told Belichick, you trade Jimmy Garoppolo as soon as possible. And so Belichick did what he's always told his players to do. Do your job. He was told by upper management, to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was going to be a good steward and do his job and trade Jimmy Garoppolo. So he picked up the phone, he sent a text to Kyle Shanahan urging him to call him. They discussed Jimmy Garoppolo. They discussed, and this was all in the offseason, among other things, why they had the debacle in the Super Bowl. And then he told Kyle Shanahan, I think that this guy would be a great fit for your offense and your team, and I believe in him. And so this was all done in the offseason. So when he sent him the text message, Kyle hit him back, was like, yo, what's good? And he's like, hey, it's that time. You interested in Jimmy Garoppolo? He's like, yeah, you damn right I am. They made the trade for a second-round pick. And so there it was. Belichick's hand was forced. He traded Jimmy Garoppolo against his better judgment and against his best wishes. And so Brady, who had been walking around and had everybody else walking around on eggshells all season long up until that point, remember, Garoppolo was dealt at the trade deadline, was all of a sudden jubilant. And he was running around and he was excited and he was happy for the first time in a long time. And he visibly was excited about the move, because what that said is the Patriots have basically married themselves to me long term. I'm going to finish my career as a Patriot, which was up in the air and in limbo if Garoppolo had stuck around. So he felt good about that. And Robert Kraft hugged him and embraced him at practice that week after the deal was done. And so everybody saw that as, man, Brady won. The stare down between he and Belichick, he won. He got what he wanted. Garoppolo is no longer here. There's no heir apparent to the throne. It's his and his alone. And he's going to finish his career as a Patriot. Now, you say what you want about Bill Belichick. And I know a lot of people call the Patriots the Patriots and all kinds of nastiness and all kinds of garbage. I don't get into that stuff. You know, you win how you win. I've always been taught by any means necessary. I'm not a cheater myself, but look, if there's an advantage that I can get, and you may call it cheating, I call it getting an advantage. You call it what you want. I'm not a cheater, like I said, but if there's a way that I can get an advantage, a fair one, you know, and it hasn't always been fair with the Patriots. So I don't always agree with their methods. I hate the Patriots' way. I think it's garbage. I hate the way that they do their players. I hate the fact that everyone that comes there is scared of not only Belichick, but also Brady. And so there's a culture that exists in that locker room. It's a winning one. So I don't disagree with results, but I hate the way that they get rid of players and how they cast guys aside sooner than they're supposed to, how they don't like giving out contracts to the likes of Wes Welker, which it did work out in their favor, but nonetheless, how they don't give contracts to guys like Wes Welker, how they made Julian Edelman hit the market only to come back to get a deal. I don't appreciate how they did Lawyer Malloy once upon a time, how they did Willie McGinnis. Look, I don't love the Patriot way, but I do respect the Patriot way, and I do respect Bill Belichick as one of the greatest coaches of not only our generation, but of in NFL history. And you know what I found surprising in reading this article by Seth Wickersham is that Belichick wasn't only concerned with his legacy, he was concerned about the legacy that he was going to leave once he left New England. I can tell you, most guys aren't concerned about how they leave a place. You know, and you hear this all the time. I've always said that, you know, one of my biggest goals in life is to leave a lasting legacy. As a man, one of your goals in life should be to leave a lasting legacy, an impact on your family, friends, and those around you. But I want to leave this earth a better place because of my existence being on it. And listening to Bill Belichick and getting a sense from him in this article is that he's not content with just winning and being the greatest coach ever. He also wants to leave the Patriots organization in a great place when he leaves. I've seen guys build up organizations, whether it be in the collegiate ranks or in the NFL, and leave it in shambles when they leave. They don't give a damn about what it looks like. And they leave at the perfect time. I mean, I've seen John Gruden build up the Oakland Raiders organization and leave them with a bunch of old farts and watch that organization crumble after he left. Okay, he had an 80-year-old Tim Brown, an 80-year-old Jerry Rice, and a 90-year-old Rich Gannon at quarterback with an 87-year-old Charlie Garner at running back. And when that all fell the hell apart, along with an old-ass offensive line, when that and some old-ass defensive players, when that shit fell apart after they lost in the Super Bowl, you see how long it took the Raiders to build that thing back up. Now, again, some very reckless management had to do with that, but John Gruden left that organization in shambles. He did the same thing to Tampa. Okay, left them old, high, and dry with no quarterback when he got fired in Tampa as well. So Bill Belichick isn't trying to do that. What he's trying to do is leave the Patriots in a spot where you can see the Bill Belichick impact long after he's gone. And I really respect that. And that's why he didn't want to allow Jimmy Garoppolo to go. And he takes a little bit of pride in seeing the success Garoppolo's had, and even hearing Robert Kraft tell some of his personal close friends that I made a mistake in trading Garoppolo. And so he takes solace in knowing that the owner knows that he should have never went behind, well, not behind his back, because he approached Bill about this and told him to make the trade, but he takes solace in knowing that the owner knows that he should have listened to the coach. The coach knew what he was talking about, and that that wasn't the right move to make. I said all of this to say Bill Belichick, just like Tom Brady, he's getting up there in age. He's getting to the point where he's looking for a way out. It may not be next year. It may not be in 2 years. It may not be in 5 years. But he's looking for his exit. And he felt like Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be the perfect exit. Because I've said it all along. When Brady leaves, this whole operation in New England is going to fall the hell apart. And Belichick, to a degree, agrees unless there's another quarterback that can immediately pick up where Brady left off, and he thought Garoppolo was that guy. And so now they are tasked with the very, very tough job of having to find the next guy to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady. And Brady's breaking down. You may not see it in his play because they're winning and he's making all the throws that you're used to seeing him make, but he's missing some throws that he didn't used to miss. And if you read the article, there's a play in a game recently where Chris Hogan gets hurt because Brady checks it down to him, and there was a wide open receiver down the field that Brady normally would have taken a step up in the pocket and delivered the football 40 yards down the field to that receiver for a touchdown. Instead, there was a little bit of pressure. He had taken some shots earlier in the game. He was a little gun shy. He checks it down to Chris Hogan, who takes a massive shot, injures himself, and has only played in one game since that injury. So Brady's, while he's still making all the throws, still making all the plays, still Tom Brady as we know him, he's not the same guy. He hasn't practiced a lot this season. He's dealt with a number of injuries, including a sore Achilles injury. And I think there's something to the concussions. Brady's not the same guy, and he's breaking out. And, oh, by the way, he is over 40. So Belichick saw the writing on the wall. Unfortunately, Robert Kraft did not. And so there's a little bit of a rift between the three. But I'll tell you this much. If you think for 1 second, and I'll close with this. If you think for 1 second that this article and now everyone thinking about doomsday in New England, if you think for 1 second this is going to stop them from winning the Super Bowl again, you got another thing coming. Now, I personally don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl this season. I didn't think it was in the cards. I think this is the Ben Roethlisberger ride off into the sunset, Jerome Bettis-esque year, Ray Lewis-esque year for Ben Roethlisberger. They're going to win the Super Bowl, and Ben Roethlisberger gets to ride off into the sunset. That's how I feel this thing goes for the Steelers this year. But make no mistake about it. If they don't win the Super Bowl, it won't be because of this nonsense. And if they do win it, what will we all say? It's the Patriot way, and Brady and Belichick just know how to do it, and they are the best that we've ever seen. And all of this will kind of get swept under the rug. And the article ends basically by saying he's not sure if a 6th Super Bowl title can fix what's wrong in New England. I beg to differ. A 6th Super Bowl title, it won't make the feelings of Jimmy Garoppolo being dealt go away, but it'll make it a lot easier to deal with Jimmy Garoppolo potentially having success in San Francisco and them having to search for a new heir to the throne. That's for damn sure. In any event, while I think there is a rift between the three, and really more so between Belichick and Brady, I don't see either one of them leaving. There are rumors of maybe Belichick leaving after the season because he has been famously quoted as saying, once the owner becomes too involved, it's time for me to go, similar to Bill Belichick, which is where he got that from. I don't know if I see Bill Belichick quitting on the empire that he helped build. I just don't see that happening. And Tom Brady, we all know, isn't going anywhere until he can't do this anymore. So I don't see this thing breaking up in the near future. And if you ask me who's the first to go, it's going to be Tom Brady, not Bill Belichick. So that, to me, is essentially trouble in Patriotize. Do I think this thing is going to end ugly? No, I don't. But I find it fascinating that the organization that has reigned supreme over this league for the last 2 decades almost has a little dissension going on behind closed doors. And over the years, it's been a massive juggling of egos. And normally when you win, the more you win, the bigger the egos get. And I think you're starting to see that manifest itself in New England. And they've done a magnificent job. And this is part of them keeping everything behind closed doors. But they weren't able to keep this behind closed doors. And so now a little bit of a light has been shined in that Patriots organization. And we'll see how they handle it, because they're not used to having to deal with stories coming out of New England. They've done such a good job over the years of keeping everything in-house and keeping everything on the hush. Now the cat's out of the bag. Let's see how they deal with it. And this is a very, very inauspicious time as the postseason is about to take place. I find it very odd that this story is leaked now and written now, and all of a sudden they've got to deal with this as they embark on another journey towards their 6th Super Bowl championship win. So this is fascinating. We'll see how they handle this. I expect them to handle it like they always handled everything. The Patriot way. I'm your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.